This is probably a very opportune time because yesterday the province announced that 6.1 million is going to Elgin Middlesex, and the RFPs are going out, and they will be closing on November 27th. So we sort of have a timeline before us. I'm going to go across the top row. I don't know if your laptops are the same as mine, but I'll introduce myself. I'm Dave Mennel. I am the mayor of Malahide as well as the warden of Elgin County. Tommy, you're next. You're muted.
Tom Marks, Deputy Mayor of Central Elgin. I also sit on the SWIFT board for the last 2 years, and just happy to be here. Move this along.
And Julie Gagne, Chief Administrative Officer for the County of Elgin.
Catherine?
Catherine Thompson, Supervisor of Legislative Services and Community Relations at the County of Elgin.
Thanks, Catherine. Al?
Al Rietzman, Manager of IT for the.
Thank you. Al Smith?
General Manager, Economic Development for the County of Elgin.
Thank you. Cecil?
Cecil Coxon, IT Manager, Township of Malahide.
Thank you. Dominique?
Dominique Giguère, Deputy Mayor of Malahide and County Councillor.
And Jim?
Jim Bunchy, the Director of Finance for the county.
Thank you. Joshua? You're on mute, Josh.
Joshua, self-employed and businessman.
Thank you. Justin?
Justin Pennings, I'm a councillor with the Township of Sutherland and also own an electrical business.
Thank you. Sean?
Sean Southern, I'm an IT consultant and formerly the manager of fiber services for Integris.
Thank you. Mike is not on. Once he arrives, then we'll ask Mike to introduce himself. I'm going to ask Tom to give us a little background. Tom's been on the SWIFT board for the last few years. So Tom, could you just give us the synopsis of the SWIFT from beginning to where we are today? Brief as possible.
All right, we'll try to be brief. Some forward-looking people 6-7 years ago from the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus realized the lack of internet in the countryside, and they started this with the goal of providing better broadband internet out in the country. They've had their ups and downs, but the last 2 years I've been on the board has been nothing but positive. They've got the right people there, Barry Field especially, and a good team. This is welcome news, but I think in this, the SWIFT runs all the way from Windsor through to up by Orangeville, Caledon, all the way to Niagara. So it's a huge, huge area, and there's a lot of gaps there. SWIFT will not make it perfect. We realize that. Actually, they'll end up with 78% still looking for better internet, and I think that's our role, to fill in some of those gaps. I campaigned 2 years ago hoping to have meetings live streamed. I don't think that would have happened without a pandemic. But I think now the pandemic has realized the importance of internet through children trying to do homework for schooling, mom and dad working from home, et cetera, banking. We have our work cut out for us, but it's very, very, very important. Hope that's brief enough.
So much is not here yet. So, Catherine, we're going to put it over to you to review the terms and conditions and the code of conduct.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. I'm just going to share my screen here. All right, so I will try to make this relatively brief as all of you have received copies of the terms of reference and the code of conduct, which you can read in full, but I just tried to pull out, I think, the most relevant and important sections to do a review. Firstly, we'll discuss the terms of reference. The Connectivity Committee is an advisory committee reporting to County Council. The advisory committee has no binding decision-making authority, but the job of the committee is to provide recommendations, technical expertise, and advice and information to County Council. The term of the appointed membership coincides with the term of County Council. Meetings will occur approximately once a month and will be called at the discretion of the chair. However, the practice with committees, when possible, is to consult the membership to see when the best time and date for meetings are. Staff supports for this committee are the Chief Administrative Officer / Clerk and her designates, the General Manager of Economic Development, the Director of Financial Services, IT Resources, and of course, IT from the Township of Malahide. The committee's mandate is a very important one. It's to identify broadband and internet initiatives, champion high-speed connectivity across the county, interface with and consult with different stakeholders, provide feedback and input into policy development as required, encourage investment that will provide higher connectivity speeds within Elgin County, create an environment to facilitate open, competitive, and innovative services and applications, maximize the efficient investment of both public and private sector funding to improve connectivity throughout Elgin County, develop tools to assist with attraction of broadband infrastructure investments, work with local municipal partners, schools, health sector throughout Elgin County to support research, innovation, and education capabilities in the county, engage with the public and private stakeholders to investigate opportunities for partnerships that promote broadband development and access for residents, businesses, and institutions, investigate infrastructure investment priorities, review and refine specific goals, outcomes, and timelines for short-term and medium-term priorities. Sorry, I skipped a few. And as members of the Connectivity Committee, now we'll go on to talk about the Code of Conduct. You have received a full copy of this. It's a lengthy document, so for the sake of time, we will just go through these relevant sections: general duties under the code, conflict of interest, interactions with the public, other members and county staff, and then confidential information. So the Code of Conduct is a council code of conduct, but it's also applicable to all members of council, the warden, the deputy warden, and members of the public who have been appointed to the committee and to advisory boards of the County of Elgin. General duties under the Code of Conduct state that every member shall abide by all applicable legislation, policies, and procedures pertaining to their position as a member of the committee, serve and be seen to serve their constituents in a conscientious and diligent manner, conduct their dealings with each other in ways that maintain public confidence in the position to which they have been elected or appointed. Members will be open and honest and focus on issues rather than personalities, avoiding aggressive, offensive, or abusive conduct. They will accurately and adequately communicate the attitudes and decisions of council, even if they disagree with council's decision, and they will conduct themselves at all council and committee meetings with decorum. Additionally, they will exercise their powers and discharge their official duties in accordance with the following guiding principles. A, to seek to advance the common good of Elgin County. B, to exercise care, diligence, and skill that a reasonably prudent person would exercise in similar circumstances. C, exercise his or her powers only for the purposes for which they were intended. And D, to truly, faithfully, and impartially exercise his or her office to the best of his or her knowledge and ability. Members have strict obligations to avoid conflicts of interest by taking the following steps whenever a member has a direct or indirect pecuniary interest in any matter that is before the committee in a meeting where the member is present. One, the member must disclose the general nature of the member's interest prior to any consideration of the matter in the meeting. This must be done verbally at the meeting and then also in written form to the clerk. We will provide the committee with a form that they can use in this situation. They must refrain from participating in the discussion on the matter or voting on the matter, and they must refrain from attempting to influence the voting on the matter or question before, during, or after the meeting. So conflict of interest is an important part of the code. There's more details about it in the Code of Conduct that you can read if you're interested. Members shall be responsible for ensuring that they are familiar with this and that they're familiar with the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, which we will also send a copy of. And any complaints are subject to an investigation by our Integrity Commissioner. Part 8 of the code describes interactions with the public, other members, and county staff. Members have a duty to treat members of the public, each other, and staff with respect and dignity and without abuse, bullying, or intimidation. Members have a duty to ensure that the county's work environment is safe and free from discrimination and harassment. And inquiries of employees from members should be directed to the Chief Administrative Officer or the appropriate department head. And part 10 of the code is the last part that we'll talk about today, and this is about confidential information. Members shall hold in strict confidence all confidential information concerning matters that are dealt with in camera. So during closed session, if there is any closed session during these meetings. No member shall release, make public, or in any way divulge any such confidential information or aspect of the in-camera deliberations unless expressly authorized by council or a required bylaw. No member shall use information gained in the execution of his or her office that is not available to the general public for any purpose other than his or her official duties on the committee. Members are only entitled to confidential information in the possession of the county that is relevant to the matters that are before council or the committee. Beyond this entitlement, members have the same level of access to information as any other citizen. So that is the wrap up of a little summary of the Code of Conduct, just very brief to keep things moving. And the final matter of housekeeping before we get on with the rest of the session is to discuss the election of a chair. According to the terms of reference for the committee, a chair will be elected from the members at the first official meeting of the committee and then will be required to be re-elected annually. Today, this meeting is considered to be not the first meeting, but an orientation session for the purposes of introducing the membership to one another, providing a background about the committee membership that I'm providing right now, and as well as providing details about the current state of high-speed internet in Elgin County. So at this session, at the end of the session, the group can agree on a date for the first official meeting, and at this meeting, a chair will be elected from within the membership. So those who are interested in acting as a chair should put forward their names at the next meeting and a vote will take place. And that is my presentation for today. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to attempt to answer them. I think that's mostly just housekeeping items that we can get out of the way before we kind of get into our next discussion.
All right, thank you, Catherine. Catherine's given us a lot of information. Does anyone have any questions, issues, clarification on what Catherine has just presented? Seeing none. Catherine, can you try to get hold of Mike and see if you can help him, see if he can get on board?
I can. I see we have a call-in user too. It looks like that might be Mike.
Yes, hello, it is Mike. I am unable to join by video conference, unfortunately, ironically. So I am on audio only here.
Well, welcome, Mike. How appropriate it is that you can't get on.
Yes, indeed.
So I don't know if Mike, if you were part of the review that Catherine gave us on the Code of Conduct and et cetera.
I heard the very end of it, actually.
Well, you've got the package, correct?
I do. I have the package and I have reviewed it. So,
was there any questions that you might have in regard to the package?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
Clear, straightforward, I believe.
Okay, thanks, Mike, and welcome.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to connectivity challenges in Elgin County.
All right. To share PowerPoint presentation. All right, so in preparing to talk about the challenges of internet within Elgin County, I completed 2 interviews, if you will, with a couple of people that I felt were fairly knowledgeable in this area. One was Ron Mervis, who is an executive at M Telecom and now Eastlink, and the other one, oddly enough, before I knew that he was on the committee, was Mike Andrews. So much of this information has been taken from the discussions that I had with those two individuals. Here are the challenges that I've identified. It's not meant to be exhaustive. One is geography. Elgin has some of the most difficult terrain due to hills and valleys in the eastern part of the county and along the lake. In addition to trees, terrain has a significant impact on some technologies. For example, point to multi-point wireless is impacted by hills and valleys, and then in the summer when we get leaves on our trees. Next point, at any point, if anybody has any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them if you'd like. Next point is ISP's ability to raise capital. Although ISPs may be awarded SWIFT contracts, those contracts require ISPs to be bonded, and some lenders are hesitant to provide funds to smaller ISPs. Right-of-ways make the business case for some smaller ISPs difficult. For example, a right-of-way underneath a railroad track could be as high as $10,000 annually. The use of hydro or telephone poles for aerial fiber can be as high as $42 per pole annually. The cost of backbone access, this can be as much as $5,000 annually. So you can see where those right-of-ways and the cost of backbone can make it very difficult to create a business case for some ISPs.
My understanding is that putting the fiber optics on the hydro poles is about a third of the cost as putting it in the ground. Is that correct?
I believe so. Mr. Andrews could probably answer that question better.
Mike,
Yeah,
you've got some
I'd be
history
happy
on
to
that?
take Yeah, it's absolutely true. In fact, it can be a wider delta than that between aerial and underground, depending on where it's happening. There's a lot of factors that impact the cost of buried construction. So, but yeah, that is an absolute, but it's usually 30% of the cost.
And is hydro conducive to putting the fiber on their poles?
You know, Ontario Hydro is quite cooperative and very, very open to that. It's the cost of doing so. Up until I believe it was last year, it might have been the year before, but utilities, regardless of who you were, whether you're a Rogers or not utilities, ISPs, telecom companies, whether you were Rogers or a company, you know, M Telecom is a good example, or Eastlink now. If you were attaching to hydro poles up until 2 years ago, the annual cost was $22 a pole, which doesn't sound like a great deal, but if you're running down a rural road and just to provide service to one customer, for instance, and there's 25 hydro poles, that's a pretty significant annual operating expense. And that $22 was more or less established about 10 years ago and stayed stagnant for 10 years, which probably wasn't reasonable, but Hydro One, through a rate application to the Ontario Energy Board, kind of slid in a dramatic increase to those poll rates, which is now $42 and change. So it's almost 100% increase, and that was granted by the Ontario Energy Board. There's a pile of industry people that have been attempting to challenge that through various means, including now the courts. But it stands. The rate stands until such time as that's reversed, if in fact it ever is. The OEB has backed up that rate. So it's $42, which again is a 100% increase. Elgin is a little different than some of the more northern parts of the province where there really isn't any other option but hydro poles. But even here, there are areas where it could be substantially cheaper to run aerial plant on hydro poles if those costs weren't so significant.
Okay, thanks, Mike. All right, carry on, Al.
Okay, continuing on, CRTC regulations can, in some cases, act as a disincentive to for some ISPs to build backbone. It has impacted some responses to Swift RFPs. Service maps, when service maps are available from ISPs, they're not always accurate or complete. In my own area, I've investigated other ISPs that say they provide service, and then when you call them up and they send out a technician, for example, Bell, send out a technician, they say, no, there's no service in this area. Even before they get out of their truck and pull their equipment out, they say there's this area. That makes things a little bit more difficult. One of the larger issues that I see is that maps are not granular enough. A cell may be classified as served. However, there may be a significant number of locations within a cell that have inferior levels of service. Again, I'll go based on my own experience. I'm in a cell that is considered to be well served. However, the best I can do is about 10 meg download and one up with satellite service. So there are, I'm going to talk about maps in a little bit more in a future slide. Scalability of technology. Is this technology capable of meeting, I see I have a typo there, it should be capable of meeting future bandwidth demands. So is it future proof? Is it scalable? I'll go back to an experience that I had about 15 years ago when through Elgin Connects, we worked with Amtelecom. One component of that project was fiber to our admin building and to the long-term care homes. Another component was putting in wireless point-to-multipoint out in several areas in the community. And after 15 years, that technology is no longer available because it was too costly to improve or replace the equipment in order to provide higher bandwidth. It didn't make business sense for Eastlink to do that. So whatever technology that is put in place needs to be scalable and future-proof. The cost of plans is another challenge. One of the experiences even from 15 years ago was that we could provide the technology to some of our users or some of our residents, but it was too expensive for them. As an example, in my own experience, I pay $144 a month for my internet access through Shaw Satellite. And although I'm thankfully able to afford that, there may be some residents that find that number too steep. Another challenge is areas of low population density. There are areas in Elgin County that have a very low density of population, and then the return on capital investment is low in these sparsely populated areas, typically farm and rural communities, rural areas. In many of these areas, they're not capable of sustaining a return on investment. In areas where the business model does not provide a return, will be required to provide additional funding as an incentive to build infrastructure. And that's exactly what happened 15 years ago with Elgin Connects. Sorry, I'm having I have low bandwidth and having trouble with my forwarding my slides. Let me do it this way. So earlier on, I talked about coverage maps. I think that some of the coverage maps aren't granular enough. This is an example of a coverage map that's maintained by the Canadian Internet Registration Authority, CIRA, who's responsible for maintaining all domains on the .ca domain. One of the things that they do is allow individuals to do a speed test and upload the results onto their maps. And what you see here is the current mapping. So one of the takeaways is that, okay, it doesn't look like a lot of people are mapping. The other takeaway is that anything in red is very bad or not very good, I guess. Internet speed with the best speeds around the St. Thomas area, which is not surprising. Next slide provides a list of ISPs in Elgin County and what services they provide. It's not meant to be an exhaustive list. I apologize if I've left anybody off, but you can see there are a number of providers in Elgin County, but once again, as I said earlier, they may not provide service in all areas of Elgin County, and most of those services are provided in the high density populated areas. The next slide provides a list of service types, DSL, which is over the phone line, and then the chart provides the speeds that each service provides. One note that I'll make is 5G seems to be top of mind for everyone lately, but 5G requires a substantial capital investment because it's, even though it can provide higher bandwidth, it's at a shorter range up to about 1,000 feet, which is about 2% of what 4G can provide. Therefore, the investment's much higher. And if you look at a map right now of where Bell provides 5G, the only area in Southwestern Ontario is London. So my hunch is that 5G will not be something that will be available out in the rural community anytime soon. That's it for my portion of the presentation. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thanks, Al. Does anyone questions about Al and his presentation? Hearing none, we'll move on. Alan, are you doing the next one?
You're muted,
Al
Alan.
Smith?
Is working. Yep. Okay. Okay. Everyone see that?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I think we can all agree that having broadband for economies, rural or urban, is important for our well-being. And in 2016, the CRTC came up with what they're calling Canada's Innovation Agenda, and which states that broadband internet services is vital to Canada's economic, social, democratic, and cultural fabric. And they made particular note of rural communities and how, in order to have a successful economy for rural communities, you need to have access to internet services. And they also stated about the level of service, 50 megabytes download and 10 megabytes upload. However, what is disturbing is only 40.8% of rural communities have achieved this standard. In Elgin, for example, we have just over 6,000 properties that are underserved, I should say. And of this area, we have about just over 500 kilometers of serviced areas, which we're calling the low-hanging fruit that is economically viable for ISPs to invest in. If we want ISPs to invest in the underserviced areas, we'll need financial support for government to attract the ISP interest. And right now, the proposed model of granting the 2/3 of a project split between the federal and provincial governments still might be insufficient to achieve the CRTC's 50/10 service to the last mile. However, various technology solutions ranging from fiber to wireless are all potential solutions that can attract government grants, provided that the 50/10 minimum standard is achieved. I won't go into too much detail about SWIFT, as Councillor Marks gave a good overview. I will say that Elgin County so far has contributed close to $530,000 over the past 5 years to fund this initiative. Now, there is an opportunity to recover just over $250,000 if we do not wish to continue the partnership with SWIFT. As Councillor Marks mentioned, the next phase of the SWIFT project will be phase 3, which Elgin is a part of. And there's also an opportunity to leverage ISP interest in bidding on SWIFT projects through the involvement of this committee and county council. So broadband is important, of course, and with COVID-19, I think that has heightened the awareness of the need and the urgency to have our area serviced. For example, healthcare, education, civic engagement, council meetings are now all online. So what are other municipalities doing? I took this slide from an internet conference that Jim and Al and myself attended, and just some options that current communities are looking at doing. For example, some are just maintaining the status quo. They'll say, we'll leave it in the hands of the private sector. However, by doing this, I guess the pro is there is no municipal money involved. However, when you leave it in the hands of the private sector, they're going to go to the areas that make business sense, and those hard to reach areas won't be serviced. There's also a option of partnering with internet service providers and using demand incentives, grants to encourage ISPs. The regional municipality of Wood Buffalo in Manitoba has had success in doing this. Also, to establish public-private partnership is another option communities are undertaking. This is a way of providing a way to leverage the funding strength of a county with the operational and deployment expertise of private enterprise. Enhancing engineering construction guidelines. If you're doing construction work, if you're laying a new road, maybe you take opportunity to lay some fiber too. Establish a network utility. This is basically an open access network. In other words, attract ISPs to share one network. Become a retail service provider. This is similar to establishing a network utility. However, a county would then go into retail services like internet, telephone, and television. And I just want to back up a little bit. I forgot to mention that in Nova Scotia, Picton County, I believe, has a successful public-private partnership. Also, there is added focus in Elgin. This committee can leverage the resources provided by the SWIFT project. So, what about Elgin County? What we're proposing is to hold a internet forum that would investigate a made in Elgin solution. What can Elgin County do to have our area serviced? What we're proposing is have a 2-hour virtual event. This would be facilitated by Jennifer Kirkham. The members of the committee who are council members will be familiar with Jennifer's work. She assisted council develop their strategic plan and other undertakings. So the goal would be to further inform the committee, which would help assist in planning of next steps. So finding a made in Elgin solution, again, this would help this committee go forward with what would work for Elgin County. This is just a draft agenda for the 2-hour period. A brief introduction. We'd have a 10 minutes of overview, focusing on the challenges and issues in Elgin County, similar to what Al recently indicated, but a bit more in depth. We would then have 2 best practices from 2 communities that have been successful in their undertaking of broadband and successfully undertaking servicing all of their area. I think it's also important that we have Barry Fields from SWIFT to give a bit of an overview of SWIFT and the progress SWIFT is making and Elgin's involvement in SWIFT. Next, what we're proposing is having 4 ISPs give presentations to the committee and to council regarding what they would do for Elgin County, what approach they would take to help Elgin County service our area. So again, it's a made in Elgin solution brought forward by these ISPs. Then we would conclude the forum with next steps and actions for the committee. So a 10-minute discussion on what do we do now? We've heard from the ISPs, we've heard of some best practices. Okay, Elgin County, what's our next steps? And that is the end of my presentation, and I welcome any discussion regarding what this committee would like to see on the internet forum, if that meets their needs. Thank you.
Thank you, Al. Questions for Al on his report?
Hi, Dominique.
Go ahead, Dominique.
Are you asking to embark on the discussion on the forum, or just questions on the earlier part of the presentation?
Right now, we're just looking at Al Smith's report. If there's any questions on what he's presented, and then we'll open up for general discussion.
Okay, no questions on the report?
Okay. All right, is there anyone else wish to make comment on Al's report? Then we'll open it up for discussion. So Dominique, you had a question.
Sure, maybe a broad comment as far as this committee, and certainly some of my hopes is that perhaps unlike other committees that I've been a part of, I would like to see a sense of urgency being applied, if not emergency, being applied to the work of this committee. Members of the community are aware that we have created this committee, and I don't know if everybody's on the same page. I'm hoping we are, but the pressure is out there. It may not be visible, but people are scrambling. Every day they're patching up different solutions with their cell phones and sitting in their cars and different places outside of Tim Hortons and the library, and just for basic services and education and writing an exam, which is nerve-wracking. And when you add the uncertainty of not knowing if you're going to get kicked out of the system and mess up your exam, your university exam. So I'm really hoping that even when we talk about a forum, like I'm not sure I want to meet just once a month and talk and come up with solutions like at a slow pace. I'm hoping we can apply a number of creative solutions and show the community that this committee is action oriented, not talk oriented, because what I keep hearing every day is you've talked long enough, we've been patient long enough, dating 6-7 years ago, and the need is now. So if nothing else, I think my role on this committee, I will remind everybody that right now as we speak, myself included, I'm struggling with internet issues, and it's having a direct impact on our lives. So hopefully we can add that, perhaps as part of the forum, perhaps as part of the way we schedule our meetings and discuss Elgin solution.
Okay, thank you, Dominique. I couldn't agree with you more. Certainly, just the fact that the RFPs are due the end of November, we've got a lot of work to do between now and the end of November. So I expect that we will have the next meeting will be very soon, and we'll discuss that. But I'll ask anyone else if there's a discussion on what has been presented and what they hope to see happen in the next few months.
Mr. Warden, if I may, I have to fully agree with Dominique. It's almost as if you've been listening in on some of the SWIFT board meetings. There is a sense of urgency there. Finally, there's actually fiber in the ground here 6 weeks ago up in Norfolk or wherever. A big milestone, but we know the wheels are spinning. We need to get this. It's heightened now with, like I said, parents are working from home. My wife worked at London Life, Canada Life now, and I got a little blurb this morning that 85% of their staff are still working from home. That's amazing when how it's changed and the demands. The ones that can't, what do they do? My wife wouldn't have been able. We're all scrambling, and there is a very much a heightened sense of urgency. So I'll stand with you. And I think staff are fully aware, and they're balancing so many things. But I think we're ready to go.
Okay, thanks, Tom. And having high-speed internet in 2020 is the same as having hydro back in the 60s. It's no longer a luxury. It's a necessity. It's from anyone else that we have in front of us. Hearing none. Julie, when do you think we can have our next meeting with Jennifer?
That's really at the will of the committee. So we will take direction from the committee and work with all of you to establish a date that works for you.
All right, I'll pass let me get to my calendar. Does Wednesdays work for everyone?
Yes.
Yes.
If we don't have issues with Wednesdays, I'm looking at the 16th. Is that enough time to get Jennifer together and maybe have our next meeting? Julie?
Certainly, we can do our best. If we run into any issues, we would certainly let the committee members know and send out some alternate dates. But at this point in time, that seems okay with us.
So does 1 o'clock work? Does 1 o'clock work for everyone?
Yeah, 1 o'clock works well for me.
Yes, because all our other meetings, the control groups are in the morning. So yeah, 1 o'clock would be great for us.
So does everyone concur that September 16th at 1 o'clock, we'll try to get Jennifer to facilitate this, and hopefully, Mike, you can be online in another week. I don't know what's happened today, but with your background, I'm sure you can figure it out.
I know enough to be dangerous about networking.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and we'll meet everyone next week at 1 o'clock. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.